Wow, how subtle. Apex, being the spiritual and narrative successor to Titanfall, did not have very large shoes to fill when it came to storytelling. Titanfall 2 has excellent dialogue and character writing, but the world is mid. It's mid as hell. Everything that's established for the mech combat is amazing. Like the dichotomy between pilots and grunts, the admittedly kind of inconsistent relationship between Titans and their pilots, the way Titans are basically the technicals of the future, and, you know, the gameplay part. Everything that is in service of the multiplayer matches, incredible. Literally any part of the world building beyond that, non-existent or horrible. So, in theory, Apex should not have it difficult when it came to one-upping what came before. I have bad news. The best parts of the lore are related to the animation department. The visual style of all of the stories from the Outlands and launch trailers are really good, even when they switched animation companies, possibly multiple times, I'm not sure. Voidwalker was a really good jumping off point, both visually and writing-wise, but it ended up being pretty much the only piece of Apex lore that has acknowledged the IMC's existence post-Titanfall 2. There are, bizarrely, only two main factions in Titanfall, the IMC and the Frontier Militia. Putting aside how improbable it is that the Frontier would come together as a collective state with a military, this whole conflict is taking place extremely far away from the core worlds. Think Earth and, like, the solar system. The IMC have precisely one gate back home in Demeter, and it gets blown up at the end of Titanfall 1. This is never mentioned again. I'm saying that again because I don't think I can overstate how important it is. The link from incredibly prosperous Earth to the Frontier gets severed at the end of Titanfall 1, and it is never mentioned again. The link to the origin of the IMC and all of humanity is destroyed, estranging up to literally trillions of people, and it is not brought up past Cooper's intro speech. Colony ships getting sent out extremely far from Earth and getting the gate home severed is the instigating event behind Star Sector. It's the reason that game's world is the way that it is. Any hope of returning home is long gone thanks to the gates having been asleep for many cycles. It's pretty understandable there that no one seems to really give a shit about Earth because it's been at least a few centuries since the gates went under, and so there's no one alive and organic who remembers it. But in the world of Apex, it has barely been like 2 decades. A lot of people on the Frontier have to have relatives on Earth or other planets in the core worlds, it's just inevitable. Hell, religions from the old world are still being practiced, and you know they must treat Earth as a holy site because we already do today. The Frontier hasn't been settled for that long. We can pretty safely assume the Frontier hasn't been settled past maybe 60 years because the initial settlers are the ones fighting the IMC and not their grandchildren. People should know what Earth is, and care that it's no longer accessible to them anymore. It's like if trillions of people's hometowns were collectively wiped off the universe, and no one cared. I hope this explains why Voidwalker, literally being one of the only pieces of lore to even acknowledge the IMC's existence, is so baffling. The bad guys in Apex are the Syndicate, who are a group we know literally nothing about. They only utilize ex-IMC bases, employ their ex-employees, wear their fucking armor, and literally are them in another universe, but they actually have no ties to the IMC. I'm not joking. They're just a group of random planets in the Frontier. And they're led by a walking plot device. Eduardo Silvia is the leader of the Syndicate. God, could they have picked a more generic name? At least the IMC sounds imposing. The Syndicate sounds like a company fired all of its writers. Silvia has been postured as the main antagonist for about 2 years now, and he's done such horrible things, such as stop an execution after an unfair trial, father Octane, and somehow be personally responsible for every single event that affects the games, and least forgivable of all, be the CEO of a pharmaceutical company. To establish a good villain, you should establish their motivations, and ideally, to make them somewhat compelling, make them sympathetic and understandable. Octane's dad? I literally know fuck all about him. He shows up to look like an ominous dork in cinematics and is riffing the dentist vibe. Those are his two character traits, and they're both aesthetic. Now, that would be pretty understandable if he was just introduced, but he's been an established character for 2 years. Even in Season 15, when he girl-bossed all over Seer to build a new arena on a different planet than the one originally agreed upon, no reason was ever given. He's just evil. That's his motivation. The clip I showed at the beginning of the video is from a relatively new cinematic, and God, this broke me. This was the instigating reason why I wanted to make this video. This right here is the best that they can possibly do. Some random graffiti that establishes what we already know from how he's been framed in everything that he's been in for 2 fucking years. It would be really lovely if I could, I don't know, like, know why he's lying, or what he's lying about, or anything, really. That's how far Respawn has fallen when it comes to storytelling in this setting. In Titanfall 1, the conflict was portrayed to be at least a little morally gray. The IMC are undeniably evil, but the militia blowing up Demeter and subsequently the only gate back to home I would classify as an enormous act of terrorism. After this happens, the IMC shatter into the Remnant Fleet, which is a plot point that all future media just forgets. Apart from showing up in Frontier Defense as renamed IMC forces, they're never mentioned again. Come Titanfall 2, all of the Apex Predators that the IMC hires are fucking cartoon villains, and all of the militia are lovable heroes with no flaws, bar alcoholism. Not even an attempt is made to humanize the other side. One of them is literally cutting off ears in his intro, just in case they weren't being blatant enough. Finally, we land on Apex, which plays its hand so obtusely that they literally wrote the twist on the wall. Obviously, the duo Decillionaire is evil. Where do you think they got all that money from? A corporation was literally the main villain. I'd like to critique this story properly and actually give a potential solution for improving on it, but it's told so badly, I don't even know where to begin. Maybe give the antagonist an easily understandable motivation that isn't like, all according to Keikaku. Why did he destroy Olympus? I have no clue. Why did he almost execute a triage center? I also have no clue. Titanfall already has a really good antagonist-adjacent character, Blisk. They've already done a great job utilizing him in Apex, where he shows up, twice. Ever. He also got mentioned in a comic once, like 3 years ago. Blisk doesn't even have any solid or well-defined motivations, he's just voiced by JB Blanc, and really that's all you need. He at least has a cool factor, he's got a good accent, interesting demeanor, extensive backstory, whereas Sylvia is just like some evil dude. Blisk's complete absence from Apex is honestly so baffling I can't even come up with a reason for why he's just totally unused when he's a fan favorite and a perfect candidate for antagonist. Did Blanc, like, get the role for Caustic and then they decided they couldn't have him voice 2 characters in the game, or what? Why is he not even the announcer for the games? For the commissioner of the Apex games, he sure is hands off. It's not like they couldn't get JB Blanc, the guy voices Caustic. I made a shit post 2 years ago where the joke was that Blisk was gonna get added into Apex to replace Caustic, and at the time of making that video, I was 100% convinced that Blisk was just over the horizon to be added as a new legend. After all, how could he not be? Even ignoring the bizarre fact that all of the almost folk hero level pilots just disappeared after the events of Titanfall 2, there are so few connections between the worlds of Apex and Titanfall that they feel like they might as well not even be the same universe. If you establish the primary antagonist of both Titanfall games as the commissioner of your blood sport, why the fuck have you not used him in said Bloodsport? Hell, why have almost no Titanfall characters returned? Where is Spyglass? The Remnant Fleet? Jack Cooper? Sarah Briggs? Literally all of the pilots? The entire Frontier Militia? Said Frontier Militia is woefully underdeveloped as a faction with no goals past fighting the IMC, and absolutely no long-term plans for what a Frontier government, or governments, might look like post-IMC, and that's fine. It's fine to have a faction who is short-sighted and overly idealistic, but I don't think that was the intent with the militia. Both because the original Titanfall was at least a little morally grey, and because Titanfall 2 portrays them all as goody two-shoes who can do no wrong. Why they up and disappeared without a trace post-Titanfall 2 is so weird after they got pushed as the heroes for an entire game which they won. I'd be okay with them having gone the direction they have with the IMC and Frontier Militia disappearing if they just explained what happened. In Apex's first launch trailer, they say,
"Liberation from the IMC brought chaos to the Outlands."
And then never talk about it again. What happened to the IMC? What happened to the militia? Here, crazy thought, what happened to the aliens that made the Death Star in Titanfall 2? The unexplained time travel device? How the hell did Anderson end up like this? Where in the goddamn is the Remnant fleet and Spyglass? There are so many plot threads left dangling that I can only imagine there were plans to use these characters for Titanfall 3 which never materialized. I couldn't make it through this whole video without mentioning the holy grail of gaming a couple times. Titanfall 3 is never going to happen at this point, and that might be for the best. Almost all of the original staff who left Infinity Ward to make Respawn have left again to form Wildlight Entertainment, who are making something? Titanfall 3 is left in the hands of Apex's remaining team, and I don't want to comment on how good they are as designers because I don't want to fling shit at any developers when management is almost always to blame. I will just say that there's a reason Apex has remained uninstalled from my PC for a long while now. I think it's truly sad, too. Titanfall, when focused on the Titan Wars of Titanfall 1 and 2, is such an excellent setting for telling war stories. You've got legendary pilots, legions of grunts, and NHPs with some of the coolest designs I've ever seen. The Titanfall doctrine, while maybe kind of silly, is so cool and it makes perfect sense within the context of the setting. If you can produce these extremely hyper-advanced mechs in under 5 minutes, and they can consistently survive orbital insertion, why wouldn't you drop 1, 2, or 3 to save a veteran pilot? When Apex was first released, I was 100% convinced that they would add Titans as NPC raid bosses that you could interact with in matches, and grunt drop pods to shoot in between players. They eventually added prowlers to shoot, which are kind of like grunts, but Titans got canned. Okay, major nerd alert. Video is probably over now, you can go if you don't want to hear this. But I believe that in pitched open conflict, the IMC would probably annihilate most sci-fi armies out there. This isn't considering their naval forces, as the capabilities of those aren't really ever touched on, but on the ground at the very least, states with a heavy focus on infantry like Star Wars' Empire, Killzone's Helghast, Half-Life's Combine, Halo's Covenant, or Mass Effect's Krogan clans would get absolutely railed by Titanfall doctrine. If your force is designed to put down subterfuge elements, you are not going to have the platforms on hand to stop a Titan from crashing through your window. If your strategy is to win through raw strength, good luck outbrooding a Titan and their nimble pilots. If you let a Titan-capable force enter orbit, say goodbye to your total control of the battlefield and the ground. As for naval capabilities, assuming Titans are as cheap as they are shown to be in multiplayer, conventional torpedoes are probably out the window, to be replaced by Scorch with a breaching charge and heavy fighter escort. If one of those breaches your ship, you are completely boned. Unfortunately, we'll probably never see anything like this, and the amount of wasted potential on display is really rather saddening. A Titanfall RTS would be lit though, I'm gonna put that on my Christmas list. Maybe Titanfall's greatest gift was inspiring Lancer, so that I can go right the world in conflicts myself. Thanks to all my patrons, who are all quite wonderful people. Love you all, and good night.